So good morning, church. Good morning, church. You're there. Okay, great. It is good to be together. We are going to be in 1 Peter this morning. I think it's page 1220 in the paging of your pew Bibles. If you are using an electronic device or you're with us virtually, I'd encourage you to be in the New International Version, simply because that's what I have, and it's good for us to have the same wording. Now, two letters from Peter. Peter is, at this point, a little bit of this context will be helpful for you. So, let's just stop for a moment. Jesus dies somewhere between 29 and 33 AD. I'm not sure the exact dating because of calendar stuff, but so let's just pick he died in 30 AD. And when you get to 40, 50, 60, so you're like 3 decades out, we start to realize that the center or the hub of the church kind of shifts from Jerusalem and moves to Rome. Rome is the place, right? And Christianity is growing beyond Judaism. And so with that move, church history tells us that the Apostle Peter ends up moving to Rome. That's actually why in the Roman Catholic tradition, Peter is such an important component, and they use it to kind of go back and claim a lot of authority. So that's another topic. But you get Peter getting to Rome somewhere probably around the late 50s, early 60s. As that happens, this great persecution starts in what is modern-day Turkey. They call it Asia Minor at the time of the New Testament. And this persecution is horrific for the Christians. Martyrdom, being used in the, being fed to the lions as sport, all of these kinds of things. And then just beyond that, sort of typical persecution. Employment, hard to get a job, all of these kinds of things being ostracized, set aside. So here's Peter in Rome. He's there kind of doing his thing, building out sort of the theology and the base of the church. And then you've got all these Christians that are experiencing this horrific stuff. So Peter writes a letter to them. He actually writes 2 letters to them. And he has Silas, who has journeyed with the Apostle Paul in his journeys. He has Silas deliver the letter. So we can know from the very beginning, before we even open it up, that Peter is going to be talking about what happens when things don't go right. What happens in the time of persecution? What happens when it seems as if nothing is going to turn out right? It's just going to all go wrong. What do you do? So let's look at this, and we're going to pick up in 1 Peter chapter 1, beginning with verse 13. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your heart on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires that you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who is called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it is not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life, handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him, and so your faith and hope are in God. That's the word of the Lord. How many of you have ever been in a season where it just didn't work out? Right? I mean, you tried all you could, you worked on that relationship, you did your best to in school to accomplish something, you lost a loved one, you ended up moving, your parents go through, all these kinds of things. That can start to happen to us, right? Or do happen to all of us. So the truth is, every single one of us have had seasons when it just doesn't seem to be working out. And very often those seasons are there not because of anything we've done, but things that have been done to us or around us or through us, for us, however we want to word that. It's life. Well, that's the case, I think, that all of us know and experience. Not simply the context for our passage today, but our simple lives. I mean, how often it just doesn't seem to go as we thought and hoped and dreamed. So I have a really, really good friend who is a pastoral counselor. So he's a Christian therapist in essence. And he is convinced that all good counseling has only one word. So we go and we're trying to work through our stuff, talk through it all, and he thinks that there's only one word. And he says it comes up all the time for him. So somebody will start talking and they'll get going and they'll talk about all these things that have happened and all the stuff that's gone on in their life and all this brokenness and woundedness and all those things. And it's important to talk about that, think about it, work through that, right? But they'll just keep going and going and going. And he has this little trick where he'll use, you're paying him to do it, so you put up with it. He puts his hand up. And when he puts his hand up, he says one word, you stop, and he says, therefore. Right? Therefore. That's it. And in his mind, and in his practice, and in the way he works this, is that causes you, it forces you to actually then start to say, well, so what? Or why? Or what's next? Because the greatest threat we have in our lives, and this is true of us inside or outside the faith, the greatest threat we have in our lives is to stay stuck in the old stuff. Right? Just to have that repeating story that we take about ourselves, we accept about ourselves, the things that others have said to us or done to us, and we start to say about ourselves. And it's just so easy to stay stuck in that past. And we all know people in our lives that are like that, right? I mean, they just go on and on. Well, now you understand why I'm like I am. Now you understand why I act like I do. Now you understand. Now you get it. I mean, if this happened to you, you would be in the same, and on like that. And that starts to be this sense that, well, if you want to just stay back there, you can. And the truth is, for many people, they do stay back there. It's actually miserable, but it's comfortable. It's what we know. Well, this happened to me. This is why. This is all this. And they perseverate on that, and it controls their lives. But they're comfortable in it. And so his point is that there doesn't have to stay that way. There can be something else, and it's a therefore. And it goes into this really interesting kind of grammar. So just bear with me as a sort of the literary nerd for just a moment. So like when you get the word therefore, it's really not traditionally appropriate at the beginning of a sentence, though it is in our text today. I get that. But it almost always comes after a semicolon, right? You just got that? Really simple. Comes right after a semicolon. And it always has a comma that comes after it. And these two little pieces are absolutely critical to life. Because what this friend of mine who uses this phrase, and he says, therefore, trying to jolt someone into stopping and saying, okay, that's what's happened, now what am I going to do, is that comes with that semicolon. It's not a period, it doesn't end it. It doesn't mean like, wow, we're never going to go back and talk about that again. But now we've talked enough, we've thought enough, we've lived enough of that, we're going to stop. And then we're going to say, therefore, with a little comma, and the rest is going to be the life that we're going to build. Are we together? Now think about it in your own life. How often have you lived on this side of the semicolon? Right? Just the stuff that it's just easier to say, oh, this happened to me. This if I hadn't had, this was me, poor me. Look at this and all. And I'm not minimizing this at all. I mean, I'm an advocate for counseling therapy. I've been in it for decades. That's not my point. It's good to talk through that, to get through that, but there needs to be some place that moves us forward. And this is a real way of being able to say, okay, now what does all of that mean? Because the great danger that you can have is just to say, okay, now that's in the past, I'm going to do something new. It doesn't usually work that way. You're still conditioned by some of that stuff, and there's some really good stuff in that past and all that's there. So how do we sort of stop? Semicolon stop. And then how do we start looking at it and saying, okay, because of this is where I am, and this is where I desire to be, or where I desire for us to be, or where I think God might desire me to be. We'll talk a little bit more clearly about what I'm saying in that. Okay? Okay, so I say this because this is the absolute context for our text today. It starts with therefore. That's important. But think about it in a larger sense. Peter is writing from Rome. Now, Peter is going to be executed himself later. It's not going to play out well for him later in Rome. But especially now in this area of modern-day Turkey, Asia Minor, we called it at the point, there's this huge persecution. All these horrible things are happening to the Christians, those who are seeking to be faithful. And there's all kinds of temptations when that starts to happen. You can walk away from the faith. You can deny it. You can start to say, well, if we just fit in more, we'd be accepted. And so you can start to do the kinds of things that the world is doing, and you just start to assimilate a little bit, and then you're not as noticeable. You can start to, all of those kinds of things are happening. You can start fighting amongst yourself, and you can start saying, God has forgotten us. God's abandoned us. God's not in this. We've lost. We've been lost. We're lost. So Peter, from the very beginning in his writing, both letters, he focuses on this. He says, therefore, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. Set your hope on grace. That's his therefore, right? Set your hope on grace. Hope is something that's coming. Believe that there can be something. Believe and trust that there can be, that there will be something, that there's a promise for a tomorrow, whatever that may look like. Maybe you're still going to be in that persecution, but there's still something else. There's something to come. There's a promise to come, and we believe for us, and at this time, especially at this time, they're waiting for Jesus to return. So it's that faithfulness that kind of plays into that. But while you're waiting, therefore, set your hope on grace. While you're waiting, seek to be holy. Now this is weird, right? Because we've messed up the word holy, and Hunter did a good job of explaining what it means biblically. We often think about holy like, well, you're holier than thou, or aren't you so holy? And we usually use it as a pejorative term when we're talking about each other. This sort of negative kind of connotation, oh, you're holy, or, you're so holy, you can't do anything, and all that kind of stuff, right? But the word simply means, biblically, this word simply means to be set aside. And just like Hunter's plates or things in your life, certain things that you have that are made holy because you set them aside. You only use them at a certain time or in a certain way or in a certain fashion. And so this is what this word means. And so what Peter is saying, he's saying, you need to set your hope on grace. Something's going to come, I promise you. And while you're doing it, seek to be holy. Set yourself aside from all that kind of stuff. Love one another. Right? So, it's easy, right? Just believe there's something good to come, right? I mean, I get that, but it's not so easy. So what comes after that comma, right? You've got the semicolon, you've got the therefore, and then you've got the comma. What comes after it? Two interesting and fascinating images that Peter uses. The first is when he says this, he says, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. So he's saying to us, as we live our life, that we're supposed to be in the world but not of the world. It's a phrase we use a lot in the church, and it's actually a pretty good phrase. Other people call us resident aliens, like we're in the world, but we're not of it. We're resident aliens. It's not really our world, but it's, so what he wants to say is, he says, you're gonna be living with people. And when you live with people, you're living out your time as foreigners with them, because you're never gonna quite fit in as a believer. You're never going to quite fit that larger culture. It's never going to be quite the same thing for you. So just recognize that. There's going to be something that makes you different. And here's the second one, which I think is woven in the midst of it. He says it in a number of different ways. He says that we are children, and we call on a father. And there's this sense of family that is built into this that is absolutely critical to being able to move forward in our life. To have a therefore with the comma that actually means something. There's community. Healing comes in that community. And it's more than just a group of people. It's a family. It's a family that journeys with us, that supports us, that cares for us. Look at, and I talk about this a lot, but I think it's overwhelmingly significant for all of us, whether you struggle with addiction or not. Look at the 12-step movement. And throughout the 12-step movement, we can say it's about this and this and this, but the biggest thing the 12-step movement about is about people being together, journeying together. It's about saying that I can't do this on my own. It's about saying that I want to be with you in that journey. And that's what this family is for us. That's why I think Peter is saying, you're not going to feel like you belong in the larger world, but you are going to find a home. You're going to find a family. Now, he clarifies this family. He says that some can think the family is like the empty way that's handed down from your forefathers. That's not it. It's not the broken, materialistic, worldly kind of family. It's something else. It's something that separates you. It's something that pulls you out. You remember in the 3rd chapter of the Gospel of Mark, it's a fascinating little story. Jesus is inside a house and he's teaching, and someone knocks on the door. And the disciples come back to Jesus and they say, hey, your mom and your brothers are outside and they're looking for you. And you remember what Jesus does? Jesus looks around the room and he says, who are my mother and my brothers? My mother and my brothers are those here who are doing God's will. A fascinating story. It's not a rejection of his family. His mother is with him. He's there in his last day of his life. He cares for her until her death with the Apostle Paul. It's not a rejection, but it's Jesus being able to say, you might think that that's my mother and my brothers, and you might think that that's the strongest connection in my life, but no, we're all family. And we're a real family. We're not a sort of family. We're a family that are willing to live with each other, to forgive each other, to die with each other, to die for each other. And that's something that is absolutely critically woven into everything about who we are. Because the only way that we're going to be able to move forward in our life, to get that therefore, to get beyond the stuff that was done to us, or the things that we lost, or the things that we tried, or the things that we did, the only way we're going to be able to move beyond with that is to be able to truly find a community. And the only real way is to find a community that's trusting, a family. And so that's what Peter is saying to them. He says, it's going to be tough. But you're going to be separated out. You're going to realize you don't belong, but you're going to have people with whom you do belong. And the new family is going to be the family with our Father. Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out this Father. Oh, it's beautiful. And the thing that's so powerful about it is that the great thing in this, and I'm not trying to simplify this or oversimplify it, or I'm not trying to cheapen it, but I really do think there's some real truth in this, is that the great stuff that comes after the therefore is very often in our lives not the stuff that we have to do. I gotta work it. But it's a humility. It's a meekness. It's a trusting in this, what Jesus has done for us. His giving of his life, his dying for us, his forgiveness to us, his forgiveness for this world, setting all things right. All of that is trusting in that, and it's resting in that trust. That's what hope is. And so it's not like, okay, now I've got to do. But no, now you just stay humble. You stay realizing that it is God who is doing it with you, and God who's doing it for you, and God who's doing it through you. It's not about all this work, all this have to do. I think that's why in the Gospel of Matthew, in the 5th chapter, when Jesus makes his first sort of sermon to everybody, right? We call it the Sermon on the Mount. He begins, the very beginning of the sermon, the very first words he says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit, those who mourn. Blessed are the meek, those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Blessed are you, he says in verse 11, when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Blessed. How can you be blessed in the midst of that? Because it humbles us. It humbles us and lets God do what God does. And that's why in our lives, in our spiritual lives, one of the greatest challenges that we have in our lives can be being really talented, right? Having a lot of gifts, a lot of things that we can do well. You ever been around someone that just like no matter what it was, they can do it? Like a musician, you put them in a room and say there's 15 instruments in this room and they have played 20 of them, right? I mean, it's just, they can do anything and everything. Maybe a lot of you are like that. You're just good at a lot of stuff. And that's a real blessing. It's also a curse, isn't it? Because you can be so good at so many things that it's like sometimes it'd be better to just be good at one thing, because then you can really hone in on that, but you can do all these other kinds of things. And I'm not saying that giftedness is wrong, but I do think that very often for us, our gifts and our talents can get in the way because we think, oh, I got this thing I got to do for God. I got this thing I got to show God. And it's wonderful to want to do it for God, but it can be overwhelming. It can separate us because it can be about me and not about this hope in grace. Not about letting God work through me because I've already figured out what God wants me to do or what God's given me to do. And so that's why I think these Beatitudes are the very beginning of what Jesus starts to teach in the Gospel of Matthew, because he's saying to us, you just got to start to slow down, humble up, and let's just see. That's why I think Advent is a real challenge for us, because it's very, very tempting for us to think that we know what to do in the season. And it's very tempting to be part of the world, to be drawn into all these different kinds of things of the world and to get caught up in all the materialism and all of that kind of stuff and all that's there. That's of the world. It's not of us. It's not of our God. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't celebrate. I'm not saying we shouldn't offer gifts. That's not my point. But it's like what really matters. You know, and how do we humble up and let God be God? Let him be the Advent for us. Let him be the opening for us. It's fascinating when you think about it. That's wellness. That moves you from all of the stuff over here that's held you back because of the therefore of Christ. And this little comma, it moves you into some wellness of life. But let me tell you something that is absolutely even more scary and powerful. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to bring it back to this. This version of the story is in the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Mark. So, Jesus is on the Jewish side of the Sea of Galilee. Now, pause for a moment. The Sea of Galilee is a lake. It's 6 miles wide at the widest. You can see it all the way across. He's on this side. On this side is the Golan Heights and Syria. It's called the Decapolis, 10 big cities that are basically in Syria. So Jesus gets in the boat, and he goes from the Jewish place over to the Gentile place, the alien foreigner place. And he gets out of the boat. And the first thing that happens when he gets out of the boat, a guy comes up to him who's stark raving mad, naked, dirty, all cut up, right? We call him the Gerasene demoniac, right? So he's all cut up and all this. And Mark tells us in a very brief thing what's happened to this guy. This guy is insane. He's out of his mind. He lives in the graveyard. The people have tried to capture him, to bind him. He breaks every chain. He breaks every rope. They can't do it. He cuts himself. He howls at night at the moon, kind of like Matthew McConaughey or something, right? You know, the guy is out of it, and he is absolutely he's insane. And he's all this, and he's running around. They can't keep any clothes on him, so he's all doing this. And the first thing that Jesus sees when he comes out of the boat is this guy running to him. And as the guy gets to him, he just falls down on his face, and he's right before Jesus. And he says to him, he says, Son of the Most High God. First person in the scriptures to say that. First person to get it. Son of the Most High God, what are you going to do with me? Are you going to kill me? And Jesus I'm building Jim's narrative in this, but Jesus gets him up, and Jesus says, what's your name? He says, my name is Legion, for we are many. So this isn't like the 3 faces of Eve or the 3 voices, whatever. This guy has Legion is 1,000. So he has at least 1,000 personalities or demons or something in him. They're demons. And so Jesus says, okay, well, you know, we're going to get rid of that. And he gets ready to cast them out. And they say, please don't just send us out, send us somewhere. So the demons say, send us to the pigs. I guess they thought they'd be safe with the pigs. So Jesus casts them out. He goes to 2,000 pigs. So there's 2,000 demons in this guy. This is why he is so insane, right? He's crazy. And those 2,000 demons go into the pigs, And then the pigs run off the cliff, and everybody gets mad because that's commerce and all of that's lost, and they want Jesus to leave. Either that or they're going to harm him. They want to get him out. They want to send him away. So all the village starts to come out. And the village is going to deal with Jesus. You messed up our economy. You've thrown all this up. This is crazy stuff. And they're going to send him on his way. And as they come out, the first thing they see is this man, naked, all cut up, dirty. He's dressed. He's in his right mind. And he's seated right there with Jesus. And that scares everybody. Like, whoa, what? Something happened here. Right? Great story. So then, Jesus does his stuff, and then he gets ready to leave, and he takes the guy in the boat and says, now you've been healed, you're going to come and be with me. I know that's what you want. That's not the story, by the way. I'm lying. That's not what happened. The guy says to Jesus, I want to come with you. You've healed me. You've set me free. I want to be with you. I want to come and journey with you. I want to be your disciple. I mean, I could tell stories that would, And Jesus looks at him and he says, no. Stay. I want you to go to your family. I want you to go to your village. I want people to see. And then I want you to be able to tell what God has done for you in your life. And so as Jesus gets ready to sail off, this man who wants to go with Jesus turns and is sent right back to the same stuff that probably messed him up the first time. And that's the beautiful, powerful part of the story. The next time Jesus goes back to the other side, he finds people that are in belief of him. And we really believe it's through this one man, the crazy guy, the insane guy, the one who was out of his mind. He had 2,000 demons, all that's there. Jesus sent him back. And this is the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ for you and me, my friends. Jesus will save us. He will rescue us. He has. We can set our hope on grace for what he has done for us. But Jesus very likely may, after he rescues you, send you right back. I think that's what Peter is saying to the folks that are being persecuted. Because when you are sent back into that, you now are a different person. You now see things differently. You now live differently. And that humility of you being a survivor, the humility of you who've made it through, the humility of you who can witness to what's been done in your life, that's what's going to bring the gospel to the world. And so that's who we are. Our therefore is our Savior Jesus Christ, what he's done for us, and we can have almost a full stop on the stuff of our life. All the bad stuff we can understand and we can put that aside. But when we move into this new life, very often what God wants us to do is to go back and to be a witness. The people who have gone through and struggled and been through the greatest hurts and pains of the world are the people who go back and serve and work and walk with others. Everyone sits next to their own pool of tears. And sometimes the greatest privilege that we have, even in our woundedness, but in the healing that we know in grace, is to sit down with someone next to their pool. Show up and shut up. It's not about the words. Just be present. And be able to show, to live, to see in humility. Not in look at me, look at what God's done. But in that, let us be the church. That's what the world needs. And that's who you and I are called to be. What a beautiful thing. To not only know that we're saved and that we have a hope, but to have it mean something for someone else. Amen.